All right, guys. GM.
GM.
How are we doing?
Great.
Welcome to everyone for joining us today. We're talking about intense Ethereum unification, all those fancy words that we've been spewing on the timeline the past couple of days, weeks. But more particularly, we have a couple of very important people today to talk about how we at Offchain Labs plan on unifying Ethereum through something we call the Universal Intents Engine, amongst many other things. So first of all, we have Stephen here, co-founder and CEO at Offchain Labs, Ed, chief scientist, co-founder as well at Offchain, as well as Spencer joining us from the product team at Offchain as well. Very excited to jump into everything today, guys. So for those who don't know, some little background. Last week, February 5th, I want to say 5 days ago, we made an announcement about the Universal Intents Engine that we're building in collaboration with a lot of members of the community, including folks at the Ethereum Foundation. So today we kind of want to shed some light on what we're building, what it's all about, who we're working with, and any other questions that people might have. But I think a great way to start, Stephen, maybe you can kind of give us an idea of like what the current state of Ethereum interop is today, and maybe what challenges that we face. Feel free to throw it back and forth between each other if you want.
Absolutely. So I'll start, and anyone else feel free to chime in. But I think the main blessing and curse, if you will, is that Ethereum has so many different builders. Even if you look in the Arbitrum ecosystem, right? If you look at Arbitrum, we have Arbitrum 1, of course, which is the largest L2, the L2 with the most TVL in it, and also a ton of DeFi activity as well as others. But they also have in the Arbitrum ecosystem, in terms of building, well over 100 other chains building, and dozens already live on mainnet. As well, all with their own flavor and all with their own user base, and often, many really cool customizations. But if you zoom out, actually, it's not just Arbitrum. There's a whole bunch of different L2s as well that are trying to utilize Ethereum block space and build there too. So on the one hand, I think that's Ethereum's biggest strength. The fact that we have so many different independent, the builders. So we're not paid by Ethereum, if you will, or the Ethereum Foundation to build what we're building. We're doing this because we believe in it and we want to, and we think that we have a really good vision of what the future of Ethereum could be, particularly in the rollup centric roadmap, which encourages this design of building L2s that can scale Ethereum. And that's really great. And if you look at any other ecosystem, no one else has this. Nobody else has this diversity of builders, diversity of experimentation. But on the other hand, what you have is just people are accessing Ethereum via so many different channels and so many different rollups and L2s, and often that experience can feel fragmented. And if you ask me what the current state is, I think people are well aware of this problem. And again, this is a problem I'd like to have, right? If there was no one interested in building an Ethereum, if there was just one L2 provider, you wouldn't have this problem. It's because there's so much interest and so many smart people building that we have this issue. But it's one that we need to fix. It's one that we need to, go ahead and have a strong story for Ethereum, what it feels like, what it should feel like, how to get on board, and how to sort of interact with the ecosystem without feeling confused or feeling that you need to, wait long waits to go around the ecosystem. You really want to give that unified feel. I think a lot of the state of this is people are thinking this is a deep research problem. And we have Ed here who leads our research team. And there are definitely many deep research aspects to it. But I also think that there's a lot of just pragmatic things that you can do to actually say, okay, rather than spend the next couple of years trying to research how to best build this build the best protocol to do, some deep thing. It's like, what can we do right now? And that's why today we're here to talk about phase one. What can we do right now? How do we do token transfers between chains, near instantly? And is that in reach? Let's not try to just say, all right, we're going to fix it all at once in a couple of years. How can we have a multi-phase approach in which, we take the low-hanging fruit? And I think from a UX perspective, we could probably get 80 to 90% there doing things that we know how to build today. And that's what we're doing to start. We're going to build those things simultaneously with the research of how to do things that are more deep and will come over time.
Cool. Yeah, so let me jump in and talk a little bit more about this, because I think Stephen hit on the key point, right? The strength of Ethereum is the diversity of different applications, different teams doing all kinds of different things, so many different chains, different stacks. That's the roll-up centric roadmap, and it's been super successful, right? And the ding that people sometimes make on it is fragmentation. But the key point is we don't have to have fragmentation. We can have diversity, we can have experimentation, different tools for different jobs, and also make stuff work together. So the goal is to say, look, the fragmentation that people talk about, sometimes they're just, it's just people complaining, but to the extent it's real, there's a lot of progress we can make right away against it and get to the point where we can support the full range of L2 and L3 chains and different applications on them as first-class citizens. And that starts with supporting standards and working within the EF and other collaborative teams about devising standards, supporting those standards. But really, if all you do is implement standards, that's great, but it's not enough. What you want to do is figure out, what do we need to do to make it practical and easy for users and developers to do stuff across chains within the Ethereum ecosystem in a really smooth and natural way? And like Stephen said, I think, the building blocks to do that, to do a phase 1 version of that gets the UX right, and tease things up for future improvements. We know how to do that now. And so the attitude here is, let's get started.
No, 100%. And I think for what it's worth, I'm sure a lot of people might be watching and be like, guys, people have already talked about intents before. You've talked about standards before. What are we maybe doing to take that next step to maybe not necessarily contextualize interop for people, but to make it tangible? To the point that you were saying, Ed, ideally, I think we targeted like Q1 or March or something like that, to have some sort of demo for people to actually feel and see what interop can look like at the very least in the beginning. What are we doing different, I guess, than some of the other folks? And what are some of the benefits for those people that integrate this universal intents engine we're talking about?
I mean, I think some of it is working collaboratively with teams across the space. I think that's a really important part of it. There are a lot of people who are building components and pieces, protocols that solve some parts of the issue. But I think what we're really trying to do is two things. One, look really comprehensively. What does the user experience need to be? What kind of support needs to be there? Not to push people out or to make an exclusive club that only certain people can belong to, but instead to say, how can everyone who's building all the things they're building plug together into a single unified ecosystem that really focuses on driving user and developer experience? To start with that user and developer experience and work backward from there and figure out how to take advantage of this huge amount of energy and work that's going on inside the space.
For sure. Spencer, I know you did a ton of work as well in the coordination, like a lot of some of the design behind this stuff. Maybe can you give us maybe your take on what actually adopting this would look like for different teams, and how would it look like at the very least working with some of these different standards and intents that already exist?
Yeah, so what we're looking to ship is just a set of contracts that can be deployed in any EVM environment that are specifically tailored for users, developers, and solvers. So what this means is you have some sort of message standard. 7683 is very widely accepted. Okay, so what does an implementation of that look like? Can we deploy that in Arbitrum 1, make it available for Orbit chains, and also make it available for other L2s? The next step of that is some sort of trustless messaging layer without introducing major modifications to any L2 stack. So we have a spec for something called the broadcast standard that we're looking to share probably by end of next week. This is something that complies with every L2 structure. So if you have the message standard and you have the messaging standard, then you suddenly have a uniform way for applications to submit user intents, and you have a uniform way for solvers to intake orders. The other piece of the equation is actually solvers. So one thing we've been doing is just talking to tons of solvers all day, every day, identifying their needs and figuring out how we can make a system that works effortlessly for them. We can tie this all together with some sort of intent dissemination feed, which we're still in the process of designing. But if you have a uniform place on every L2 where all solvers can look to find orders and fill those competitively, and then you combine that with some sort of front-end experience, you suddenly have interop for any EVM chain ever.
So I wanted to point something out there, and I guess I'm curious on anyone's take here. Whoever wants to pick it up. You mentioned EVM chains, Ethereum layer 2s, Arbitrum chains. Like which? So first of all, is this unique to Ethereum scaling solutions like L2s, L3s, or does it can it technically introduce other EVM based chains that aren't necessarily Ethereum aligned? Technically.
Yeah, I think there's a way to even bring in like some of the alt VM chains in the future. There's a lot of discussion about that in the EF interop working group. But I think it's really important to start with the basics and just get like base level EVM chains supported. And then 2-3 months from now, okay, we can go introduce support for some of these other chains.
Just to jump in there for a second, also in both of your both the question and the response, I just want to highlight that we said EVM chains, right? We didn't say Arbitrum chains. And the idea is that we think about interop as a broad problem for Ethereum. And our goal isn't to solve this, build a wall around Arbitrum chains and say, okay, we're going to make a really good experience if you build on Arbitrum and kind of create some friction if you don't. And I say create some friction because it's really not necessary, right? The tools that we have, we know how to build for every EVM chain. And we could build an artificial wall if we wanted to. And maybe there are those that would say from a business perspective, that would be a good idea. But our goal here is actually more broad. And actually, I don't think it would be a good idea from a business perspective, because I actually think that, the best thing we can do right now is unifying Ethereum and not trying to create, inner communities that don't interop with each other, that are vying, and fighting each other. I think we need a unified front. And our goal is, unless there's a specific reason why it can't work with other chains, we would like it to work with every EVM chain. And EVM is easy because many of the things we do are not Arbitrum specific, they're EVM specific. Sometimes we'll have technology like our fast withdrawals between any trust chains that really requires you to be an any trust chain from a technological standpoint. And of course, we'll ship that anywhere it works. But hey, if there was an OP stack chain that wanted to use Arbitrum any trust data availability, it could be that, with the right amount of work, that could work there too. Our goal is really, though, to say, how do we unify Ethereum? And I think that is the most important thing that we can do to really compete, not as an Arbitrum ecosystem, but as a larger and broader Ethereum ecosystem.
I was actually, I had an interesting take today. I'm curious on maybe even what you guys would think about this. I actually think I think it's good to have the banter that us teams have on Twitter, going back and forth with each other. Maybe sometimes it can get a little spicy, but I think banter like that does help every team push to do better and maybe meet the standards that the broader Ethereum ecosystem requires to be quote unquote Ethereum aligned. But I think what's also important while doing that is, putting your money where your mouth is and actually like shipping things that does make a tangible difference for the Ethereum ecosystem in unifying one another. Like in a weird way, I feel like the L2s and L3s of Ethereum are all brothers and sisters. And just like brothers and sisters, we don't always get along, but we still have the same parent. We're part of the same family.
I guess in this analogy, Vitalik is the dad.
Yeah, I guess so.
No, I mean, it is the case. I think we have so much more to gain by working together to create an open and interoperable space than by trying to push each other down. And we're really focusing on trying to make this universal and making it available as widely as it can be available, right? If there's a non-Ethereum EVM chain that wants to interoperate and they want to pick up these smart contracts or something, that certainly they can do that. Interop is good because it leans into what Ethereum is best for. It's the big developer community. It's the variety of applications. It's the focus on building a structure that is sustainable and that unleashes developers to build stuff. And the better we can make interop, the more that's going to happen. And the more it happens, the more Ethereum will thrive. And then that rising tide will lift all of our boats.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's definitely where the combination of what we're building alongside what the community has already been kind of doing on their own comes into play. Like, for those of you who haven't seen the tweet already, I'm happy to list off some of the names that we've had conversations with and are helping kind of contribute. It includes folks like the Ethereum Foundation, Espresso Systems, Layer Zero, Uniswap, Across, Chainlink, Polymer, Open Zeppelin, Caldera, Reservoir, Li-Fi, Everclear, Nomial, and a ton of other teams that I'm probably missing. So you can get mad at me. I apologize. Like, and I'm still, yes. Right, yeah. I'm just reading off a list, right? I mean, I imagine that list will grow. I think ideally, and I think it's important for what it's worth that something like this actually doesn't necessarily come directly from the Ethereum Foundation necessarily, and more so from like, again, we could argue that Offchain Labs here is a third-party contributor, quote unquote, but an Ethereum aligned party that wants to see like some of the most innovative technology grow and actually be useful to everyone in the ecosystem. Because the goal at the end of the day is not for people to onboard to Ethereum from an exchange and then bridge over here, then bridge over there if they want to mint an NFT or go somewhere else to swap. So you're doing it all in one interface, and ideally, liquidity can flow between everything. So that feels like what we're building is as the end goal, at least to me. But I will go for it, Steven. Go for it.
Absolutely. That is the end goal. The end goal is a good unified experience that feels like a centralized experience, or even better than a centralized experience, right? We don't need to, that's like the baseline. What can we do, more, even better should be our question, right? We shouldn't be limited to the things that we're doing today, but at the very least, right? So we're able to onboard new users that might not be familiar with the blockchain, that haven't used crypto before, and get them to a point where they feel comfortable and they're able to do things and they're not confused and they're not losing track of their money, right? So they have a single unified experience. And then, you mentioned all those teams that are built. So there are teams like us that are kind of on different parts of the stack. We have Prism at layer 1, we have Arbitrum at layer 2. Now we're thinking of Interop, how we sort of, be even closer to the user in some ways. And then at the same time, we're also, you mentioned all those teams. There are so many teams that are just focusing on Interop, right? That are focusing on whether it's bridging and other intent-based solution, message passing. There's so many different facets here. Shared sequencing, and I think one of the things we have to do is really package that all up for the user. Right? The user doesn't want to, the same way the user doesn't want to go ahead and say, I want to use this chain or that chain. The user doesn't want to go and say, all right, I need to use this particular interop solution to do this, and then I'm going to go to that chain. I got to go and use that one. They just want a packaged up, unified experience, and that's why I think what Spencer mentioned is single place where an intent-based solution, where a single place where solvers can go and just help you solve those problems and do those things for you, right? And just provide that interop interface for you is what we need, right? So that's all abstracted away from the user. The user just specifies what they want to do. Under the hood, some piece of technology gets used. And the good thing is, while there are so many different interop teams building, parts of this problem, we probably have a really, really good coverage. And if we're able to unify that into a single experience for the user doesn't have to think of under the hood what's going on, just has to think about what they want to do, what they intend to do. And we can package it up, as Spencer said, with some nice front end that the user can understand. I think we're going to be like 90+% of the way there, and there will be the long tail, right? How do we do deep message passing? Calling other apps on other chains. There'll be a long tail of things that we can do that we might not know how to do today, or that are maybe more expensive today, or slower today. We'll be able to improve this. But the thing that we've always been about at Offchain Labs, you could look at the history of Arbitrum, right? So Arbitrum today is a lot better than it was when we launched Arbitrum in 2021. Arbitrum in 2021 was a lot better than the academic paper in 2018. We could have just said, let's just wait until 2025 where we'll build an even better version of Arbitrum, or maybe 2030, or maybe 2035, right? We'll have the best system in the world. The idea is, no, this is a real problem. There are users today that need these solutions, and perfect is the enemy of the good. We need to get something really good out there today, with a roadmap to how we improve it over time. And the good news is that we know how to do a lot of this today. We just need someone to package this up and actually present it and offer it to the users. And the tooling that we're building is going to help do that for the ecosystem broadly in an open way on not just Arbitrum chains, but the EVM chains broadly.
Yeah, and one of the lessons of sort of this history of Arbitrum that Stephen talked about and the improvements is that putting something out there that's solid and works well and is flexible unlocks those future innovations. Arbitrum is better today than it would have been in a world where we just waited to build the perfect thing. Because by putting a solid and flexible version of it out there early, we were able to learn what it is that users and developers needed. We were able to discover new things. It was a driver of innovation to have that working ecosystem out there. And the same is going to be true here, right? Getting stood up a universal intents ecosystem, it's going to allow people to understand what it is that users really want, what it is that's needed to make all these pieces work together efficiently and fast and trustlessly. And it's going to be a big unlock for innovation in this space. And that's the win-win, right? By doing this now and doing it in a way that's thoughtful and flexible, we both solve problems now, but also we make it easier to solve problems in the future.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I think one thing that's worth maybe even touching on as well is like timing. Obviously Ethereum as an ecosystem, a lot of people tend to criticize it as moving slow. They say it's ossified, this and that. I think one thing that's very important about what we're talking about today is that it's very not that it's time sensitive, but like we're shipping these things knowing that there is a timeline and knowing that time does exist. Because it's easy to say that we'll do these things in the next 5-10 years, but it's doing these things in the next month, 2 months, couple of months even, that I think is what probably makes it most important for builders. So I guess maybe we can jump into whoever has the most context on this, maybe what phase one looks like, this universal intents engine that we're talking about, and maybe what this looks like afterwards.
Yeah, I can jump in here. So what this looks like for the Arbitrum ecosystem specifically is that we're selecting some pilot chains where we're talking to solvers to make sure that they're in a position to where they can support general token transfers on these chains. We're directing the top apps on these chains to just integrate any third-party front-end hook. That could be a Cross Plus, that could be Lefi, that could be Router, that could be Relay. The goal is to allow people to bridge funds into a chain without having to leave the web page and go to a separate bridging website or make a decision. Like minimize the amount of decisions, get the base functionality there. We also have a solver loan program that we're working with the foundation on. This is recognizing that a lot of solvers today are running with 200K trying to service 40 chains, right? So we have an opportunity with the foundation to bootstrap a solver loan program that provides plenty of capital to actually fulfill these user orders. So they'll be there day one. And we're looking to have this live by the end of Q1 and then gradually scale this up to support the entire Arbitrum ecosystem into supporting other EVM chains as well.
It's very exciting, by the way. I think that part of the announcement when that went out, I think caught a lot of people by surprise. I mean, most people probably saw it and like, okay, they'll probably get it done by the end of the year, maybe. But I think to say that yes, end of Q1 we'll have something tangible at the very least, not the full product in its final form, but something that you can see. Hey, this is probably where we're going to be going. Is probably one of the most important things for sure. And then of course having that kind of 1 to 3 second kind of transfer or swap thing is also pretty unheard of, right? I mean, if we think about it, like block times on some other major L2s are like 2 seconds long. So we're talking about like cross-chain swaps or transfers that are equivalent to that of block times of some other chains, which is wild.
Yeah, I think the end goal in designing the intent engine was if I have a friend text me, how do I buy this? I want to bring my instructions down from 20 steps to 2 steps. And then we can refine that further later when you bring in like 7702, or you want to use some sort of account abstraction bundling to make that a single signature transaction that works on any Ethereum chain. The entire Ethereum ecosystem will feel like you're using one blockchain. And it's recognition that we have all the solutions today. It's just no one has packaged this properly. And that's why we have the power as Offchain Labs to package this properly and serve as a catalyst to kind of unfreeze all the deep research discussions and let users win today.
I wanted to ask too, so considering that's, you mentioned end of Q1, users can expect to get their hands on some of this stuff. Like, so does the what is the expansion of, I guess, what we're building look like? And is it more, we're calling it the current one, the universal intents engine. So it sounds like the current one is mainly intents. With the upcoming, I think we mentioned Q3 or like sometime down the year, it'll include much more than that. But what does that look like? And will it be more than just cross-chain swaps and transfers?
Yeah, I mean, you could be. So obviously, cross-chain swaps are the thing that are most in demand now. But really, the general concepts of intents and solvers can be used to provide a much wider range of different types of applications. And so it's just a matter of kind of generalizing the underlying rails so that the intents are asking for and the solvers are providing a broader range of services. So this means, the ability, if I have funds over here, to not only move those funds over there, but also to do some action with them, do some operation with them over there. It means, but really it's partly about unlocking the idea of intents and intent fulfillment as a primitive that developers can think about using, right? And so you'll start with some very standard ones, but there are also ways that that people can devise their own. And I think this idea, again, of making a kind of a space for people to innovate in terms of what can you do with intents, what kinds of intents, what kinds of cross-chain coordination do people want? I think some of the applications we'll see will be things we might not have predicted today. But when you build a general purpose technology, make it flexible, fast, and trustless, then you're going to get people are going to do amazing things on it.
I think one thing that's worth even bringing up as well is the, like you mentioned, obviously packaging all this together and making it feel tangible to the end user is the goal here. But having that front end as well that really kind of makes it all intangible is also important. Do we think that? I guess maybe I'm more curious on everyone's take here is how important is it that there isn't just, for example, one app that supports this, whereas ideally almost every wallet supports, like MetaMask, any wallet app, any even app that maybe self-proclaim as like a super app, they call them now in crypto, right? Like it sounds like something that needs to be product wide instead of just one product focused. I'm curious on everyone's take here.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of incumbent wallet providers today who have not thought about the user experience for the past 2 years. And I think that if these wallet providers are not going to run with an intent engine and actually think about how to abstract the chain selection process from a user, then there is room for someone, maybe someone in this room, to fix that issue.
Alpha leak.
Yeah, I mean, there should be like this process of remote accounts where you can control any EVM chain and any action from one single account.
Yeah. Well, part of the goal here is to make it so that it is easier and more standardized for wallets or other front ends to be able to support this stuff, right? That making adoption easy is, big picture, one of the most important things you can do, especially when you're talking about interop, which is all about getting different pieces to work together. So, you can't force providers to, say, adopt these more user-friendly approaches, but certainly making it easy is something that's an important goal of this whole effort.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think so, and that to me kind of feels like the end goal of like Ethereum unification. Like in my mind, like if we're talking about like a lot of big blockchains out there, like Bitcoin is in its own lane, Solana may be in its own lane. I do think Ethereum is like probably the only ecosystem that can solve for exactly what we're talking about, like shared block space, shared liquidity, but with many different flavors of development environments. It feels like it's literally the only chain that could solve for this. And that's why I think we can probably all agree that we're very excited to keep building this out. Yeah,
it's the Ethereum approach, right? Don't try to build a single way of doing everything into the core, but instead, let people innovate, let people figure out how to make their things work together, and let the best ideas, the best approaches emerge and get adopted.
Sweet. Yeah, definitely. I think the probably the most important thing, besides everything we've talked about, is how can people get involved? You guys heard me earlier mention like a list of like, I don't know, 10, 15 different teams. There are tons of more teams that I think that reached out to us after the fact that we're now talking to, but I'm sure even more that maybe even haven't reached out yet. In what ways, do we foresee maybe working with other abstraction providers, bridges, even other L2s, and what's the best way maybe they can get involved with us?
Yeah, there's a couple steps here. So at the bottom of the blog post, there's a public-facing Notion page that's guidance for the broader Arbitrum ecosystem. If you're a chain or an application that wants access to interoperability, check out that Notion page and then reach out to Offchain Labs or the Arbitrum Foundation. If you want to help in building the intent engine, we're really active in the EF interop working group. There's also a breakout group in there for intents. But if you tag any of us directly in there and ask a question, like we're happy to cook something with you.
Sweet. Yes. Yeah, definitely. We're very excited to be shipping this stuff and working with the ecosystem to do so. So yeah, definitely, obviously if you're any of those teams, feel free to reach out, whether it's to me, Spencer, or anyone else on the team. And yeah, we're looking forward to shipping Introp and all this stuff with Ethereum, because frankly, I think we can all probably agree that I think Ethereum's next big moment will be exactly what we're talking about now. Even if L1 gets faster and more efficient, it still doesn't mask the fact that a lot of people are still onboarding to layer 2s and using them every day for their transactions, whether it be swapping, minting NFTs, or whatever. So, I think ideally we build this together, and that's definitely the trajectory that we're on. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's the core theme, which is we're not doing it ourselves, but we are going to be biased towards action, right? We're not going to sometimes, when there are so many people involved, that's the problem. There just ends up being meeting after meeting and bureaucracy and working groups and nothing happens. So we're going to be part of the working groups. We want to bring in others. We want to bias towards action, and we can make mistakes and we'll correct them, right? I don't think we'll make mistakes in the, but we might do things that could be better 6 months later, but that's okay. We'll iterate over time, but we're going to solve the problem, with action.
Beautiful. It's a great note to end on. Thank you guys, Stephen, Ed, Spencer, for joining me. And yeah, we'll catch you guys on the timeline. All right.
All right. See ya.
Thanks.
All right, guys.
Hey.